Welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, and we are back again at the Dirty Water Distillery recording here. Good friends of ours, so we love to hang out and have some drinks. If you're in the area, their tap room is open. I believe they have beer on tap now. Stop in and check it out. We are here with Terry Kole.
Yes, we are.
Local artist. I can't even remember exactly how we met.
Was the first time we met the lobster party that we had?
Oh, that might have been. Yeah, because you were a lobster artist for the lobster crawl, right?
Yes,
yeah.
I was.
And you are also a children's book illustrator.
Yes, I am currently.
So you were posting something recently, and I'm like, hey, let's get you on the podcast and talk about it. So what's going on in the children's book world?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm in the local author children's book world. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on 2 books right now for an author who owns Windermere Bookstore here in Plymouth on Main Street. But I think where his store is, it's actually considered Court Street, which is confusing for people like me who are from out of town.
Cusp. I can never tell. I always say Main Street and... Google sort out the rest.
So I've been working on a book with him that author is Bill Burnett, that some children at Forestdale Elementary helped him write about his character Alex the Cape Cod Ant, whose first day at school, of course, was at Forestdale Elementary. So I was working on that and got pulled off of that.
And how did you get involved in that? Was it just through like friend connections type of thing? Or?
Very interestingly, he found me online. I have a website with all of my artwork, with way too much artwork. And I think he Googled Cape Cod children's book illustrator. I mean, I think it was that much information. Yeah. And I came up.
Oh, nice.
So, and that was kind of cool. At the time, we were living in Sagamore Beach, and we have since moved to Providence, the art mecca of this area.
Providence?
Yes. It's the home of Rhode Island School of Design.
Well, this is
Providence
true.
Art Club.
Yeah.
Very shishi. I'm not a member yet because I can't afford it. I'm still in the starving artist category. But anyways.
But I feel like Plymouth has a huge art community.
Huge.
Cape Cod has a very strong one.
Yes. And the whole South Shore.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of
get into
art in general? Like
art in general?
Yeah. I mean, was it always a thing with
you? Always. My father was an automobile designer in Detroit.
Okay.
And he had a huge blackboard in the basement, and he was teaching my older sister, how to draw.
Yeah.
So I would just kind of hang out, basement poles that you used to like swing around. I would just hang out on one of the poles, pretending like I wasn't really paying attention. And I took every lesson he gave her to heart. And by the time I was in middle school, I was already doing caricatures of all the teachers that was printed in the school paper.
Yeah.
And by the time I was in high school, it goes from... In first grade, everybody's an artist.
Sure.
By the time you get to middle school and you say, how many of the kids are artists? They'll go, you'll have maybe 5 kids in a room.
Right.
By high school, everybody turns around and points.
Right.
And they were pointing at me.
It's a weird, like, oh, God. The book is called, I can't remember the author's name. Everything I Learned.
Oh, in kindergarten.
I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And it's that he talks about how, like, when you're little, you say, who can sing? And everybody can sing and everybody can dance. And it's almost like everybody can until someone tells you can't.
That's right. That's right. And they should never say that.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Yeah. I just came from teaching 6 up-and-coming cartoonists over at the Plymouth Center for the Arts. And 2 of them broke into song while we were doing cartoons because we always listen to music, and we were listening to The Greatest Showman. And
oh, sure, that's with Hugh Jackman, right?
Yes, Wolverine.
Yeah.
And they were singing so well, And I was...
Now, what age group was this?
These kids are like 12 right now. There are a couple 9-year-olds in the class, but mostly... I actually like to teach them a little bit older, but... You teach who comes.
Right, sure. Yeah.
And they were doing a fantastic job. But I could see in that scenario that my high praise for those 2 might have been hurting the feelings of the one who had just today tried out for choir at school, but she wasn't singing, so I didn't,
Right, yeah.
She was bashful.
It's so easy to discourage someone that age without directly discouraging.
That's right. Yeah. As a teacher and as a parent... It's a tough row to hoe. It's too much praise goes to their head, and they get in. illogical feeling about, that they can do it all and they can't.
Right. Sure.
Or you don't give them enough praise and they feel very insecure about the gift that they have.
Yeah. So how do you try to, is there a trick to walking that line?
I don't know. I really don't know. You'll have to analyze my 2 adult children and see how I did.
Let's not play that game. So your father was a car designer early on. Did you gravitate towards kind of that industrial design?
No, sir. So, growing up in Detroit, it is assumed that if you have art ability, you will work for one of the car companies on a drafting table. It's
which is probably a good thing that you didn't head in that direction, because isn't that kind of not a thing anymore, Detroit?
No, it's a big thing. Yeah. If you're still living in the Detroit area, that's who's employing you. I mean, people do still buy Fords and Chrysler and General Motors products, usually in the big truck category now. But they have to diversify now, and they are coming up with, electric cars and things like that. So there are still jobs for people in Detroit. But I did not want to draw cars. For a little while, I worked at an ad agency downtown that did those glossy catalogs that you get when the new cars come out.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Shows you all the beautiful details and incredible photographs. But in that advertising agency, when it was the period of time where they were making these things, you had to basically spend the night, bring your sleeping bag, and just spend the night, because for 2 months, you were just going to eat, sleep, and drink the car catalogs. And I decided then that was not what I was going to do.
Right.
So my dad asked me, well, you want to be an artist, so how are you going to make a living? And I took it as a kind challenge.
Yeah.
And I diversified. I learned how to draw everything. I started out as a cartoonist. I had a cartoon strip that ran in about 5 newspapers.
Oh, what's the name of the cartoon?
Oh, well, you will never have heard of it. And I didn't name it. The editor of the first newspaper did. It was called Clem's Classics, because my middle name is Clementine.
Okay.
And the character in the cartoon was Clem. So do you remember Kathy, or are you too young?
Yeah. No,
Okay, so I was doing Clem's Classics at the same time that Kathy was out, and it was my take on, young single girl in the working world kind of thing. But she was an artist in an art department, and her buddies drew the lines on graph paper for a living. And half of your listeners right now don't even know what graph paper is, but it's something once upon a time that if you were in math class, you had graph paper.
Oh, yeah. I use graph paper all the time when I was in school.
Absolutely boring job, and that was the joke.
Yeah.
Is that they had the most boring job. So everything else that took place in the office was much more interesting than the work they did.
My default boring job was I glue the staples together.
Ooh.
So that was kind of like my joke, boring job.
Somebody's got to do it, right?
Exactly, which I'm sure it's a machine, but
Right.
So
anyways, started out as a cartoonist, right? And in those days, we created files called morgues, where you'd put in a manila envelope hands, feet, faces, refrigerators, mixers, cars, tires, bicycles. And so the morgue goes. And so I was collecting, and I would try to draw all those different things.
So these are like reference photos.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And now I still have a morgue, but it's on my computer.
Right. And it's funny because I remember being in art school and they bring in speakers and they'd be like, you need to collect every reference photo that you can find. The weirder, the better. You're never going to know where you're going to use that. You should be looking through magazines all the time.
Right.
And now you're just like, I'll just Google whatever weird image I need.
I know. But the problem is, again, as an art teacher, trying to teach the kids to create their own reference or you need to track down the photographer whose photo you just stole to use as reference. Yeah. And, because if the kids are entering an art show and they win a first, second, or third prize, it's based on someone's photograph. It actually might show up in a paper.
Right,
somebody actually might see it. And you can get in a little bit of trouble for that.
Yeah.
So anyways, I ended up working at the Detroit News full-time as a daily illustrator. And in that case, I had to be able to draw everything. My first job, that first day on the job, this is back a long time ago, there was a bombing of a military base in Beirut.
Okay.
An American military base. And I had to draw the layout of the military base and where the trucks entered and then what kind of bomb they blew off. And then it was, anything that fell out of the sky or caused an earthquake or anything like that. So planes, trains, automobiles, hands, financial things. So I started to diversify. And then I went to Belgium and illustrated books for...
Was there anything that they brought to you that you would never guess that you would was there one thing when you worked for the newspaper where they're like, oh, we need you to draw whatever, and you were like, okay, I don't even...
The biggest whatever actually is the only time I won an award for anything.
Really? Okay.
And it was an illustration of how they do hair transplants.
Really?
So you see the back of a balding man's head.
Mm-hmm.
You see the plug that they're taking out of his scalp,
yeah.
out of the base of his scalp, and then a hole in the top of his head where they're going to put it. And there was a takeaway of the several layers of your skin and where the hair follicle is and stuff. So an information graphic.
So
done in black and white.
It had to look more like a textbook kind of drawing.
In that case, it did. In that case, it did. Working for the newspaper, I got to do all kinds of art. I've drawn portraits of the Kennedy family or Yuri Andropov. What do we call those mushrooms? Those morel mushrooms. It just depended on what story they felt needed an illustration that a photograph was too boring for.
Was that like the attraction to that job? Was that you never knew what they're going to ask you for?
Oh, I thought it was thrilling, yeah. And, it does kind of boost your ego a little bit because the next day there's going to be a piece of artwork in the paper that a lot of people are going to see, and it's got your name on it.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel too bad. But I actually wanted... My father was a news junkie, so I became a news junkie. So working for a newspaper was very fulfilling for me. I felt like maybe on any given day I might actually do artwork that matters to someone.
Sure, of course. Yeah,
and that felt good. But that wasn't good enough. So then I had to go to Belgium and work for a company that did books that missionaries use all over the world. So I illustrated textbooks from, basic belief to theology books.
Really?
60 illustrations per book and different paintings for different covers.
So why was it that you ended up in Belgium for that?
That's a good question, right? Nobody ever thought Belgium would need missionaries. It's just where the organization planted their headquarters because they actually also... It was a huge, 5-story building with the print press, video studios, audio studios, a whole the artists took over one whole floor. But on another floor, they had editors, writers, and people who corrected papers from students in Africa, India, China.
So did you go to Belgium and then get that job? Or did you apply for the job and then move to Belgium for the job?
Yeah. My mom's from Belgium.
Okay.
She brought me and my 2 sisters on a trip for our first ever trip overseas, 6 weeks. Talk about overstaying your welcome. We stayed with a lot of relatives. Yeah. We stayed for a long time. But a girlfriend of mine from Detroit was already working in Belgium as a principal of a school. And she arranged for me while I was there to have an interview.
Yep.
Wasn't so sure that I really wanted the job, but I knew I wanted to live in Belgium for a couple years for the whole family roots.
Sure,
what would have
Find
been
out where
like?
You come from,
right.
Kind of
what would have been like if my grandfather didn't move my mother to America?
Right.
What would I be like? So that was a very interesting 2-year experience. And during that time, I met the man who became my husband and the father of my 2 brilliant children.
Is he Belgian?
No.
Belgian?
No, he's from Foxborough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which is why...
Oh, wait, because you're from Detroit.
I'm from Detroit.
Okay, so it's not weird. It's... So...
No, but it was strange. Because he's a journalist. He's a rather busy journalist. He's the news editor for the Associated Press here in New England.
Oh, wow.
He was a foreign correspondent for the Associated Press while we were living overseas for 16 years. So, yeah.
And so I'm assuming he came back for his family? What brought you back here?
Well, eventually, our children grew up and wanted to go to college. And we really wanted them to go to college in Europe because it's about $300 a semester, full stop, not per class, full stop.
Jeez, $300.
And they said, but...
I'd go back right now.
Right?
Yeah.
But Mom and Dad, we want to know what it's like to be American. I said,
it's way
to be an
more
American
expensive,
and to be a college student means you're going to feel broke for a long time.
Yeah.
So they came home for college, and we were still kind of okay until our daughter left. First, our son went to Rhode Island School of Design, which kind of anchored us. We came to Rhode Island every summer that we came home. And then our daughter came to Wheaton College in Norton.
Sure.
And
is she also artsy?
She is, but she was under the shadow of her older brother, who's 100 times the artist that I am.
Yeah.
And so she felt very inferior, and so she hid her art.
Well, and that's got to be hard for her. Like, if you are comparing yourself constantly to someone, you know, on a 24/7 basis, it's got to be pretty hard to.
It is very
develop
tough.
your
art skills.
Yeah, not just your art skills, because I feel like it'll almost push your art skills harder.
Yeah.
But to develop your kind of personal brand where you're like, I'm an artist, because you look and go, granted, she probably can outdraw 90% of the population, but she can't outdraw her brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, it was tough. So she decided in the high school years to get into acting. And I think she was even doing it at middle school. And she's very dramatic. I thought she was excellent. And then her brother, just on a whim, a friend of his said, hey, Nick, why don't we try out for blah, 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 his senior year. And he did, and he was amazing. And she said,
God, those people are so frustrating.
Yes, who can do everything?
Yeah.
Very frustrating. Yeah. So anyways, no, she came home and decided that she wanted to be a campus minister. So she works for a group called InterVarsity and currently trains the leaders who go on campuses and help kids deal with their questions about God. Oh, wow. And she's just breaking into being a doula.
A what?
A doula. So you're a guy, you wouldn't know. So
nope.
There's alternative ways to give birth, and you can go to a doctor, an obstetrician, and have your baby in the hospital. Yeah. Doctors, nurses, masks, and pretend that it's a medical emergency. Or you can have a midwife and a doula. So the midwife takes care of birthing the baby, and the doula helps the woman who is birthing the baby.
Oh, okay.
So your attention is focused on the mama.
So for lay people, like a birth coach might be comparable?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, not exactly, but
right,
so
because they're also a doula is also allowed to come into a hospital setting.
Yeah.
Not all women want to give birth at home, but my daughter did. So it's really going back 100 years and then forever behind us.
Sure.
A midwife and a doula. That was always a part of the plan.
Yeah, I'm actually in an office right now where there's a lot of like babies being had, and there's a lot of like stressed out to be and just currently mothers, and should I do this and should I do that and blah blah blah. And
right.
My kids are older, and I'm like, hey man, they've been doing it for millennia.
Yes.
Just relax.
Right.
You know?
Right. But they need other women who've gone through it to help them.
I mean,
just relax. Right. You have a watermelon come out of there.
But I mean, I just, when it gets to the toddler age, it's like, oh my God, do I do this? Do I do that? He's not eating, and you're like, just relax.
I know. Somehow we all survive.
He's hungry. The human race has been going on for a long time. Like, he'll be fine, or
Absolutely.
she'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, what is your son doing now?
So my son is a freelance artist.
Okay.
He's a character designer.
Mm-hmm.
He illustrated a book for Disney when the first movie about Maleficent came out. Now, there's a second movie about Maleficent. But the first one, so maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, he was chosen to illustrate that Disney book. He has just recently redesigned Spyro. Are you a video game player?
Yeah. I'm a big nerd. I know.
So he redesigned Spyro and a whole slew of dragons for the Spyro game. Mm-hmm. And He represents, he draws now on an iPad Pro using Procreate.
Yep.
And Procreate, the team, is rather fond of him. So they have asked him to go speak to groups of other artists. So he's gone to Poland, he's gone to Virginia, he's gone to California, and he speaks to crowds of artists on how to use Procreate effectively.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah.
So those are just a few of those.
We do the figure drawing group.
Yes.
And it
so
is
needed.
Constant, where like more and more people will show up with iPads, and it just the amount that you can do with it. You know, one friend of mine has a watercolor app.
Yep.
That you can do exactly what you can do with watercolor and a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But
just with a tap, you can erase your mistake.
Yeah, you can just hit the undo button. You don't have to erase.
That's right.
And it's so amazing. To me, I've just never kind of. I'm a paper and pencil kind of guy.
Traditional.
Yeah. And even when it comes down to like, I have a paper calendar. Like I can't use the one in my phone.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't. It's a tactile thing with me. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you? Where your son is involved in this? Do you use
as my career continued to go, as my husband went over to Europe to be a foreign correspondent for the Associated Press, I went as an information graphic artist. Mm-hmm. So I was already working in New York for the Associated Press, and there is where I had to make the big transition from paper and pencil to computer and making digital art. So they hired me because I had years of experience with the Detroit News. And so I can read a story and think really quick on my feet and get a solid illustration sketched out really fast.
Yep.
But at the time when they hired me, I couldn't even draw a square on a computer and fill it in.
Yeah.
But they still hired me. So they said, no, we'll train you. And their idea of training me was to put me in a corner with a great big Mac.
Yeah, go figure it out.
And say, your deadline is a week from now. Whereas all the other artists in the room, their deadline was end of the day because it had to be with tomorrow's newspaper or news feed.
So their training was giving you more time to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, right. That didn't work. Yeah. So after 2 weeks of me floundering and feeling like I was in kindergarten and everybody else in the room was in college, they paid for me to have some classes. Now, no offense to you as a male and any other male out there, but I was being taught by a man. And I find that men make things a little bit more complicated. And so this teacher's or this instructor's directions to me were so difficult. And once I finally got it, I thought, what needs to happen is somebody needs to make like a cookbook, a recipe book.
Sure, yeah.
If you want to create this, then do step 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, you know. So I made my own cookbook for the work that I had to do at AP. And actually, I did okay. I kept working for them for 3 or 4 years.
But I feel like part of being an artist is kind of discovering what your medium can do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even if you're picking up a pencil, you're going to try and figure out what that medium can do. If you're an oil painter, you're going to try and kind of push the boundaries of what it can do. And so I don't feel like digital is that weird to be kind of sort of self-taught and half-taught was by someone else. So I feel like it's just kind of part of the...
I think what they tried to encourage me back then was just treat it like it is another art implement. Mm-hmm. Don't think of it as a computer. And now with the iPad Pro that's out and all the other tablets that are out, it's so much easier for the kids to make that transition because you are still drawing on something with your hand.
Right.
With me, it was a mouse. It was
so you're doing something on here on the right and it's on the screen in front of you?
Yes, I was famous for click and drag, and I got to be really fast at click and dragging.
Yeah.
And then you know, with the little tool on the computer, you make your curves a little bit curvier and stuff.
Right.
But yeah.
And I mean, nowadays, I have friends who even have computers that their computer screen is on like a gimbal, so they can, you know, do whatever they're doing and then, you know, grab it by the corners and like pull it down and then draw right on the screen and then put it back to where it was. And
yeah, my son has been through all those different stages. It's been very interesting to watch and learn, and now he lives all the way in Vancouver, so my learning curve has just ended. But you still have that access where you can call him up and be like, I'm having this problem. Right?
Yeah.
His wife is also an artist, and she's a storyboard artist for Netflix cartoon series that exists out there called Hilda.
Okay.
And I would actually probably call her. No, my son spent one day on a trip here with me in a wonderful way. He just felt relaxed, and he did take time on his iPad Pro, and he did explain a lot of things that were really befuddling me before.
Yeah.
And so we've gone past that hump of, Mom, I can't be your teacher, to, yeah, he can teach me.
And sometimes it's just, like this is a shortcut or try it this way or use this tool.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and he lives and breathes this. He's a very good communicator. He's a very good teacher. It's just that when it's your mom, there's all kinds of other...
Oh, yeah, because then you're kind of like, oh, my God, this is just like the remote control I tried to teach you 20 years ago.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
So now that you are illustrating children's books, are you doing that digitally or is that traditional?
I am doing it traditionally.
Why did you choose to go that way?
Occasionally, I'll do an illustration on the computer that I'm pleased with, but I don't have an iPad Pro yet. So...
Your son didn't hook you up?
Well, no.
Wow.
I mean, he's doing well, but not that well. No, my Santa Claus it's been on the list 2 years now, so hopefully I'll get that. But so I'm still doing a lot of not necessarily click and drag on a Mac, but I had a tablet. Did not like the way that felt. That was like trying to cut your own hair in the back of your head using a mirror.
To me, it's like it's got something to do with. The screen is very smooth, and there's no resistance.
Okay, you can
get
a cover
for it.
Yep, that creates that resistance.
So that has been the biggest thing for me, and I just have not ever...
Yeah, too slippery, right?
Yeah.
Too slippery.
I feel like I lose some control, kind of, I guess.
Yes. You do. But I think you adapt, and I do think that come Christmas, if my Santa Claus is listening to this podcast in the future, that I would also like that little shield.
Screen protector, I suppose.
Yes, we'll call it a screen protector so that I have a little bit of that same
like a little
feeling.
bit of tooth. Yeah.
So the illustrations that I do now are acrylic, but to some degree, acrylic, at least in my background, is treated like watercolor.
Okay.
Watercolor freaks me out. Again, it's a control issue.
Oh, my God.
And you have to think in reverse,
yeah.
right? You have to think, I have to leave all the whites blank.
But you have to just have that ability to kind of go, I'm going to put blue here or there. Sure, great.
Right?
Yeah.
And then my son, who also seems to have mastered that, he'll sit down next to me and say, Mom, you have to paint the whole painting at the same time. Not just, I always start at the left and move right because I'm right-handed and I don't want to smear.
Sure.
And he's like, no, you can't be that anal. It's like, well, yeah, actually. But with acrylic, the great thing about acrylic is that if you've made a mistake, if you blopped paint, if you don't like the color, there's a chance you can change it and not do the painting all over again.
Right.
So for the books are, say, 8 by 10 when they're done, and I'm doing the piece of art would be 2 pages, so a double truck. But I like to do my artwork larger, so my paintings are about 20 inches wide by whatever that would be tall, 16 or so. Because if you do the cover,
them down
then they reduce it. Well, then it becomes digital because I take it to a scanner and they scan it. It becomes digital. Sure, then it's back in my computer and I add the type and do the layout. So, yeah. So I am still very much a traditional artist when it comes to that. And the style, I didn't realize I was creating a style, but I see it. I have a style.
Yeah.
It's a little too neat and clean. I'd like to get a little bit messy and think...
See, I feel like I struggle with that. I look at people's artwork and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's loose and it's fluid.
Yep.
And I just can't do it. Like, I don't know whether I'm just too rigid or I'm too much of a control freak or I'm like, no, it's not right. And I keep working. And opposed to just being like that, like, I feel like maybe I should work in watercolors more.
Yes,
and just kind of give up control.
And find a teacher who's really loose, you know. I did take a watercolor class at the Plymouth Center for the Arts when I first arrived back in the States. But my teacher was Andrew Cusman, who is more the anal retentive artist than I am.
I was going to say, I know that name.
Yeah. He's got a gallery right here.
Right up the street. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Cusman Gallery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's a phenomenal watercolor artist,
Yeah.
but he's an extremely tight watercolor artist.
Right.
So now at the Plymouth Center for the Arts, we have Tony Visco, and he has a much looser style. And I think there's a chance I could loosen up if I took a class with him. And there was a woman at the Plymouth Center for the Arts, a Tuesday painter, because they have a Tuesday session for just $10. You can walk in and paint the whole day there. And her name is Ginny Wilson, I think. She's an amazing, loose watercolor artist. Oh, I watched her one day and said, that's what I want to do. She gets the paper all wet. She just plops different colors and lets them do something. And then after they set, then she starts. It's like, I want to do that, you know?
Yeah.
I want to do that.
It's like you look at it and you're like, oh, it looks easy. And then I just can't not continue to work it and just try and pull something more photorealistic out of it.
Sometimes when I'm teaching kids, I had actually a homeschool class.
What were you teaching today?
So today was cartooning.
Okay. I'm you said that.
But I have taught all kinds of different subjects to kids. And I had a homeschool group that met in Sagamore Beach. And we would do all kinds of different things. And a lot of times they were acrylics. And the Plymouth Public Library would have my kids' art on display then. Mm-hmm. So I was teaching them that they were all doing large format then. So, like 18 by 20 or something like that, which for, a kid who's 14, 15, 16, that's a little bit daunting, right? Because they really like to draw like the size of a quarter.
Right.
And it's like, no, we're going to expand your vision.
And use the whole paper.
So I taught them to do a little tiny, first they had to do a drawing of what they wanted to paint. Then they had to do a little tiny rough. They could use watercolor or acrylic for the little rough. And just to kind of figure out what they wanted their colors to be so that that big space wouldn't be so daunting.
Right.
And I would do the same thing on the side for a painting that I would like to add to their exhibit. And 9 times out of 10, I liked my little tiny, messy, trying to figure it out watercolor more than my, I got tight. Now my acrylic finished product is so...
It's funny you say this. Like, lately the stuff that I've really enjoyed the most that I've done is like the 5 to 10 minute sketches. Like when I spend more time on that, then I start to kind of second guess and, kind of work out the cool, loose aspect that was there before. Yeah. So I'm almost feeling like I need to spend less time on things.
Yeah.
Which is just weird, but...
Yeah. Nope, I agree. You get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter as it goes on. And it's like, no, I liked it when it was looser,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite medium to work in? Is it acrylic?
Well, I've got to say now I'm completely comfortable in acrylic. But I really was a pencil sketcher, pen and ink, 1,000 dots kind of person. I illustrated one whole book with, it would be nice if it was stippling, but because stippling makes me think you take a toothbrush and a screen and go fling, fling, fling. But this was my hand going in a rapidograph pen.
I have a good friend of mine, Dan Kern, that does that. And he does amazing work. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it.
Right, you'd lose the will to live.
Yeah,
I mean, that fold of fabric, that.
Have you ever heard of an artist by the name of Phil Henson?
I'm thinking of the Muppets.
So his name's Phil Henson. He was obsessed with stippling to the point where he actually caused nerve damage. And he developed a shake. And so he kind of gave up art for a little while, and he came back to it, and he went to see a doctor, and the doctor's like, well, I don't want to tell you. He's like, you just need to embrace the shake. And so then he started going from stippling to scribbling.
Ooh.
And then kind of found this inspiration in, I don't want to say lack of ability, because he's amazing, but in restrictions. And so then he's like, well, I'm going to create a piece of art for less than $1, and I'm going to create art in less than 10 minutes, or I'm going to create art that is going to last for less than. He did a whole series called Goodbye Art. So then when he was done, there was nothing left, and he did a portrait of Amy Winehouse out of frozen wine.
Oh.
So then when
cool.
I thought it was gone,
Oh.
he did a portrait of Jimi Hendrix out of matchsticks and then lit it on fire.
What a great idea!
Yeah, and
as long as I would be the one. I'd be photojournaling the.
Oh, he like videos it. He's
right?
amazing. He's all over YouTube.
So that you still have the art.
Yeah,
you really do.
And the one that I thought was really impressive was he had like a grid of maybe like 6x6 votive candles, and lit them in a pattern, and then like would video that, and then light them in another pattern and video that, and then he like put all the videos together, and I think it was the Mona Lisa when it was done. But he's like, I was really. He's like, I created this piece of artwork that never actually existed.
Right.
And so, like, the stuff he does is really, really fascinating.
It's kind of mind bending, isn't it?
Yeah. He also did a portrait of Bruce Lee. He would dip his hands in ink and do karate chops.
Ooh.
And did a portrait of Bruce Lee.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
So it was just these amazing, like, really kind of breaking down. And, like, we were talking about how you kind of, you have your oil paint and you really push the boundaries of what it can do. And, like, he really has done a great job doing that.
It's a wonderful thing because I think we humans can be so much more creative than we are. We do get locked in.
Yeah.
And I'm a commercial artist compared to a fine artist, and I think people who do things like that fella are more fine artists. It's like, what's in their soul? What's in their being? They allow themselves to think outside of all the borders, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. Yeah. Absolutely love that. I am an artist for hire.
Yeah.
And
that's really the trick, is like trying to find that fine line between, because you can do amazing stuff like that, but no one's going to pay you to do it. It's going to be tough to make a living.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, unless you get in galleries for doing those kind of things, and then you have like a pop-up gallery and everybody gets to watch you do this, I mean, now with the internet and YouTube, people can create those kind of events.
That's where he's kind of like got his... not start, but that's like where he's found his niche.
His niche and some success,
because, he's done videos of all this stuff. So, do you use the internet to promote? Well, obviously you use it because that's where
you saw it. Yeah. So the older people, baby boomers, have taken over Facebook, I guess.
Yeah.
So I post. I usually create a Facebook page for the making of whatever book I'm working on to promote it. The book that I'm working on right now has a middle of December deadline for me.
Okay.
The author is just now getting around to getting his manuscript copywritten or copyrighted.
Sure.
And so he's wanted me to keep it off social media until the copyright is official.
Right.
Which is really frustrating because now I'm on painting 4 out of the 12 that I've got to do. And
can you tell us what this one's about? Or?
I can't yet,
no,
except that local people who have children will gravitate towards it.
Okay. Local Plymouth or local Rhode Island?
Local Plymouth.
Okay.
Local Plymouth. Yeah, I'm still, even though...
Now you're Rhode Island.
Yeah, even though I've moved to Providence and I've tried to get my feet wet in the art world over there. I've done some summer camps and stuff. When it came to fall... They all said, "Yeah, we want to have you teach in the fall," and nobody followed through with it. Right. So just the Plymouth Center for the Arts, they keep knocking on my door at the right time. No, so I come back every Thursday to Plymouth, and then all the other time I'm really trying to devote to getting the artwork done for the books. So this one top secret book that's coming out, like I said, if my job is done with it, and by Christmas, let's say, it should be published by maybe March of 2020 and be here for all the locals and all the tourists we're anticipating coming to Plymouth.
Nice. Is it 2020 themed?
Nope.
No, just Plymouth. Okay.
It will have a life after 2020, definitely. But what a great time for this book to come out.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I don't know how many millions have you heard are going to be coming?
Oh God! So I don't know.
And what do you believe?
There's a lot of debate about that right now. Where I know a lot of local business owners, and they're like, "We don't believe it." So right now, there's a definite shadow of doubt.
Yeah.
Where business owners are like, you said this is going to get bigger and bigger every year up until, and it hasn't been. So I think it's really going to be a matter of, put your money where your mouth is, and we're going to see what's going to happen next year.
Right.
But all in all, it's still a great town to live in. Still love it here.
Right. Yeah. And as we were, taking off and leaving Plymouth, the artist in me still wanted to stay involved in Plymouth at least through 2020, in case there were fun art projects to be a part of,
But I mean, that's the cool thing about, once you have friends in the area, I mean, you can just always pop back and, hang out at a gallery or check out a show or see who's got what going on.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing artists. I know Alex Lever's got a show opening tonight.
Really? Where?
Quincy College.
Uh-huh.
So it might actually be over already because it started at 5. It's probably over soon. But she's amazing.
Yes.
Then you have like Jesse and Eddie at the art shop, and they're doing a lot of great stuff. So I mean,
do you know the funny thing about Jessie?
Which funny thing about Jessie?
No, this right? No, she is.
Yeah.
She's a crazy good artist, right?
Yep.
I didn't know her from anyone, and I was doing these like daytime paint events at the Plymouth Center for the Arts for people who didn't want to go out at night.
Yeah.
We called them Tea Time with Terry, which sounds kind of weird, but I would make. I also love to cook, so I would make like biscotti and scones and bring fancy coffee and teas, and people would paint a thing, right? It would be like the Inebri-art events where you've got 50 people coming and now we paint this, now we paint that. But I let people, I'd say, if you're here and you're artistic and you want to do your own thing, here's all the paints, do your
definitely
own thing.
Into that now.
And I said, but if you are insecure and you want to go step by step, I'll do step by step,
Yeah.
So Jessie comes to one of these classes.
Oh boy.
And I'm walking around the room looking at how the ladies are doing, and oh my gosh, my eyes pop out of my head. And she had asked me a question, and I looked at her and I said, I think maybe the roles are reversed. I think you need to be up here and I need to be sitting down there because, yeah, she was amazing.
I remember one of my first Jessie experiences. Her and Eddie and that kind of whole bunch started coming to our figure drawing groups, and we had a male model in, and we'd take a break, take a break a couple times a night. And I walked out of the room. I come back, and Jessie's like in the model's lap, like for pictures, and I'm like, what is going on? But,
a free spirit.
Yeah, I mean, that's just Jessie.
Mm-hmm. A very free spirit.
Oh, yeah,
I'm really glad that you've got those figure illustration opportunities. I do teach figure illustration over at the Plymouth Center for the Arts.
You reached out to me about that, yeah.
But
it's always in the day.
It's it's class. I've done it for kids and then for adults, but everybody's always fully clothed, and it's good. It's good practice.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. But at the Plymouth Center for the Arts, we can't have nudes.
Oh, really?
Not yet. I think
that's so weird. That would be like.
Did you have to get any special permit over there?
Well, we don't do nudes at New World.
Okay.
Because it is open to the public, and we actually encourage people to kind of wander back because we want people to find us and figure out what we're doing. I mean, we've been there 6.5 years now, and but we do 3 times a year. We do full nude ones.
But where?
So that was kind of the trick.
Right.
Finding a good location that was reasonably priced. So we kind of bounced around to a bunch of different locations. And the one that suits us best is where we're sitting right now, the Dirty Water Distillery.
Uh-huh.
So we come in after hours.
Yeah.
So it's not open to the public. There's big windows. Obviously, we close those off. And it's been great. We had a really decent turnout. We've done it twice here so far, and we're looking to book more. So we'll probably do 3 next year. It's
such important practice, and to the uneducated, it seems slightly naughty.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's not. If you're an artist and you have to... One book that I did was a mother and a child.
Yeah.
And extremely realistic.
Yeah.
And had I not had figure illustration class, I wouldn't be drawing figures as solid as I can.
Yeah.
And every time I'm teaching students and everybody takes turns posing, I'm practicing as well.
Right. And you just can't get the same feel from drawing from a photo.
No,
You know, there's something about seeing
no.
like in real life where you can even kind of like move your head and get a better idea of like.
But it's also more challenging, and that's that's what I want to do is really challenge everybody, because when you're working from a photograph, it's already 2D, it's already flattened,
right?
And so that's actually simpler. And I've caught some students tracing. It's like, oh, we don't do that here, you know. Yeah. I'm really, if anything, some of the adults who have taken classes from me have said what I've taught them is how to actually see. Yeah, and that's, to me, that's the highest compliment. It's kind of up to God to give them the ability to get better and better and better, but to slow down and really see what's in front of them.
Right. Because and to look at it. So many people will look what they're doing and then just draw. Forever. Yeah. They'll be stuck on their paper for 15 minutes. It's like, and so you're going just from imagination. Right.
And there's nothing wrong with using your imagination, but if you're trying to capture, of course, everybody wishes that they could just sit down and do a drawing of someone that they know or love, or a famous person that's important to them, and they can never, they can never get it to look like the person. Yeah. And that takes time, and that takes practice, and it takes really looking. Yeah, and really, really looking.
And I don't think people, like non-artists, really realize how much you do. What it looks like, but not off the top of my head enough to draw it.
Right.
And people just kind of. So when people are like, oh, I can't draw, I've been like, well, yeah, because you aren't looking at anything. Like you need some sort of reference, and once you can draw from that photo, then you can kind of manipulate it and change it and make it yours.
Right.
But it's that, you have to have some sort of frame of reference. You can't be like, draw a tiger and be like, all right, well, I know they're 4 legs and they're orange, and other than that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Now, I think another thing that artists can capture that other day out in nature, there's something fascinating and beautiful to look at and ponder and kind of fill your soul with, whether it's sunrise or a sunset or a really foggy, misty, rainy day, like that has its own beauty to it.
I feel like artists tend to like all days. Like I have friends be like, oh, it's raining out. I'm like, I like that. When it's just finished raining and everything's kind of damp and cool out. I think you tend to kind of develop this ability to see things.
Right. Right.
And whether that's part of creativity or not, I don't really know. But
well, I think it is. I think it's a part of your creative soul that you've got. Yeah.
So, do you foresee just doing children's books now, or do you want to do something else? Is there still like something on the bucket list that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, to get to this point in life, and really, I'm totally in love with doing children's books right now.
You don't want to go back to comic strips?
Well, because I'm teaching kids how to do it, I guess I get a little of the comic stuff out. Yeah. Every time I've got a class.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like I'm doing it. And actually, that my daughter-in-law, she and my son are both on Instagram, and their Instagrams are all about their art. That's another kind of story in and of itself. But lately, she's been doing these really cool cartoons of their life. They've just been married a year now. Yeah. Their life as husband and wife, the foibles and the funny moments and stuff. And so it'll be like, five different cartoons. You got to flip through it.
Yeah.
And they're delightful and wonderful. And
I wonder if I've seen them, because I feel like there's a few artists that are doing some really cool ones about, like...
Her name on Instagram is Erkschnert.
Erkschnert?
Erkschnrt. And so she, who's going to remember that?
Right,
so
Erkschnert works, yeah.
And then my son on Instagram is Nicholas Kole, Kole with a K. Both of them are definitely worth following for the artwork. And with Nick doing his work on an iPad Pro using Procreate, Procreate saves every stage, every step you've done on the program.
Right.
So he'll show, he'll have an illustration, and he'll have a couple different, parts of it. And then on the 4th click, you get this video of
my daughter
everything.
does that. My daughter will send videos of her drawing from nothing all the way up. Yeah.
Yes, and it's amazing. I always tell my students to follow him on Instagram because of those little videos.
Yeah.
I said always look for the video icon and click on it, because you'll learn so much more watching what he does and when he pauses and when he switches something, and you can kind of figure out why, why did he do that?
And I feel like it's good for up-and-coming artists to watch something like that, because it's going to be like, oh, they went back and erased something.
Yeah.
And not everybody's perfect all the time.
No. And the other thing I like them, because when I teach, even cartooning, I teach about the structure underneath. So what I've realized over the years of teaching cartooning is that kids, if left on their own, will draw their character absolutely stagnant.
Yep.
Standing there, they'll hide their hands. They won't show their feet from knees down. There's nothing.
Yep.
And so I'm really trying to shake them out of that. And so we start with the Disney little Pillsbury Doughboy running.
Sure.
There's, he's running, and there's the, 9 different stages. He's jumping, 9 different stages. He's slinking. And I have them do those and then do their favorite cartoon character trying to do those, and then create their own character trying to do those, because I just want them to get their characters moving, not just standing.
Right.
And
it's so easy when you're that age to kind of cut out the parts that you don't want to draw.
Yeah, because it's scary.
Hard.
I hate to do hands.
Yeah. It's funny. So one of the things that Inebri-art does is a daily drawing challenge. Been running, I don't know, close to 3 years now on our Facebook page. And every day at 8 p.m. a post goes up, and we pick a theme for the month, and there's usually a daily prompt. Right now we're doing bugs.
Ooh.
Last month we did dinosaurs. And it started because I was frustrated drawing hands. And I decided one day that I'm going to draw a hand every single day. And I would just go and find a picture of a hand. And granted, you're drawing from a picture, which isn't great. But it's better than nothing. And
That's right.
And I drew a hand every single day. And one of them I actually submitted into an art show and won second place in pen and ink.
Oh, awesome.
And it's just one of those, I was so struggling. And then by the end of the month, so it's only 30 drawings.
Yeah.
In 30 drawings, I went from struggling to being hey, I really like this.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's amazing how much progress you can make in just that kind of repetition relatively quick.
Yes.
And granted, I should probably go back and do another 30 days of hands, but...
No. So when I got the job at the Detroit News, going back in historical time here, they asked me if there's anything I didn't like to draw. And
your answer was?
Hands.
Hands are pain.
And wouldn't you
so
know,
difficult.
After the bombing of that one military base, that for the next 2 months, it's every single illustration I had to do have hands.
Yeah. No one has hands.
No.
Because they're really complicated.
They are. So if you break it away and think of it as a mechanical, robotic thing first, to get those different joints and segments going, one of the best illustrations that I did was, it was for an article about robotics coming into the workplace. So it was a robot hand shaking a human hand.
Oh, man.
And the robot hand, I was using reference, so it had all the wires and screws and, the computer plate that's back in there and every little segment. I found it easier to draw that robot's hand than to draw the human hand that was holding it.
You're more breaking it down into shapes than trying to make it look organic.
Yeah.
And
sometimes our hand, the back of your hand, if it's doing one of those, it's those look like sausages.
Right. And then, if something's pointing away from you, you're
foreshortened, right?
Foreshortened, or you're just getting a weird, okay, I'm just getting the knuckle. It just looks like a weird lump. It's really hard.
Yes, and they are weird, lumpy things.
Yeah. One of the biggest bits of advice I got from a drawing magazine was your thumb is kind of a chicken drumstick. So you have the meaty part is kind of the base part that's attached to your hand.
Yep.
And then the
that's
handle of the drumstick
part.
is the thumb. Yeah.
Yep. With a little knob at the end.
Yeah, with a little knob at the end. And that kind of made sense to me at the time and made a huge jump.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes that little bit of like, hey, try it this way.
Right. It works for me. Maybe it'll work for you. With kids in cartooning, I say, if you want to draw hands like Disney hands, your Disney princesses, draw the shape of a leaf first.
Okay.
Because a Disney female hand
is very like pointed,
kind of comes to a pointed leaf kind of thing, and then divide it up into the fingers and the thumb.
Right.
If you're drawing a guy's hand, they kind of square off the tips. Mm-hmm. So it's not these rounded things, it's kind of squared off. Who was it? We were doing Calvin and Hobbes,
oh my God, Bill Watterson.
Yes, but he actually, I got scolded because I used a Calvin and Hobbes drawing as advertisement for my cartoon class, and they actually are so copyrighted. They don't even want you to do that, right?
Yeah.
So if you're listening, you don't know that I'm doing this or where I'm doing it.
Oh my God, if Bill Watterson's listening to this, I would be so happy.
So honored, right? So honored. So one of the kids is drawing Hobbes, and he's having the hardest time with his hands. And I said, well, first of all, he doesn't have 4 fingers and a thumb.
Right.
He's got 3 fingers and a thumb. So
like most cartoons.
Take away, my cartoons had that too. And people would ask, why? Why does Clem only have? It's because it's just so hard to fit that other finger.
I don't really want to do
It's just too much, But I was teaching them, look how squared off and squat those are. Those are long rectangles. So draw the long rectangles first and then round them off a little bit, Made it a little bit easier for kids.
Yeah, and it's just, you got to keep doing it, and then one day you kind of do something, or someone points something out, and you're like, oh my God, you're right, or that's all, I never thought about. Like, in between your fingers, when you're little, you draw like a V, like there's a point at the base of your hand. It's not it's squared off.
Right.
Like you can fit your fingers in between.
That's right.
So you have to like draw like a finger and then a line and then the next finger. It doesn't come to a crease.
Right. Unless you have webbed fingers.
True. There are reasons, but I mean, even if you do that, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. Just kind of like, I understand the structure.
Right. No, it's just like anybody who became a fantastic musician. You hear the incredible music piece that they're doing now, but you have no idea all the boring practice that they had to do. Yeah. Scales and scales.
And that's the one thing I try to always tell people when they come to live drawing for the first time, like, this stuff's not hanging in an art show. This is practice.
Right. Right.
If you happen to get something amazing, that's great, but that's not what we're here for.
On the second children's book that I did, which was this mother and child, it's called I Am the Rainbow by Gretchen Pine. I was struggling because there's a lot of rainbows in this book. It's a vision that the mother had of seeing her daughter in heaven because her daughter had passed away at the age of 4. And she told me it's not like the rainbow, the arch. Yeah. It's more like the Aurora Borealis, So I looked up Aurora Borealis, and then I'm doing this in acrylic on watercolor paper, and so far everything I do has definitive lines. There's the edge of this and the edge of that. And so, I'm watering the paper, getting my acrylics super watery, adding that there's a thing you can add to your water that'll extend the life of your acrylics so they don't dry quite so fast. And I'm still having a hard time. And at that point, my son was living at home working on his own book. Yep. And he would come downstairs and see me struggling. He'd say, Mom, you know what? You have to give yourself permission to suck. Yeah. This rainbow that you're doing right now doesn't have to be the one that's going to be in the book. Right. Just have some fun with it. And I've got 25 large pieces of watercolor paper upstairs full of rainbows that'll never see the light of day because I just had to loosen up. That was the book in which I loosened up the most and tightened up the most. So the backgrounds, which almost every page was another fluid rainbowy thing going on, and the very realistic mother and daughter, very sharp edged kind of drawing or painting going on the top of that. And that was that book.
That's awesome.
But if you're an artist out there, give yourself permission to suck. And if you don't like it,
that's fine.
Set it aside. Maybe don't crumble it up and rip it in half because somebody else might really like it. Yep. But just set it aside and move on. paper, even though it seems expensive when you're buying really good watercolor paper, really, at the end of the day, it's pretty cheap.
Right.
You know?
Terry, this was awesome. Where can people go online to see what you're working on?
Oh, so a couple places, but if you want to see way too much Terry art, my website's simply my name, terrykole.com, and it's Kole with a K.
Yep.
And Terry with a Y. How many minutes do we still have?
Keep going.
Okay, so funny story.
We'll stop when we stop.
When I was growing up as a young girl wanting to be an artist, girls were really not in the industry.
Okay.
Women artists, and I really did not want anybody to know that I was a girl because I wanted to be a success.
You know, I hear that story a lot from people.
Do you? From women?
Yeah, from authors and all sorts. We're like, oh, that's why I go by like my initials, or I changed the spelling of my name so people didn't realize. That seems like a very common thing.
So I did that.
Yeah.
At a young age. I think I was middle school, and I decided I would be Terry with a Y, not with an I and a heart over it, so that nobody would know that I was a girl. But then, as girldom goes, I got married really early, took on that fella's name, got divorced 4 years later, kept that name for a while, started working at the Detroit News, and my mom said, honey, when are you going to drop that name? Because people are calling me by that name.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, Mom, really? Ooh, sorry. Okay, so started to get rid of that name, go back to my maiden name, had that for a couple years, and then met my husband of 33 years now, and took his name. So when I go on a job interview, I actually show artwork with 3 different last names.
It's so funny, like how stuff like that happens. A good friend of mine, Adam, I knew him for years, and then for some reason someone was writing him a check, and he goes, oh, make it out to Frank Miller. And Frank Miller is a hugely famous comic book artist. And we're all like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And he's like, no, seriously, my name's Frank Miller. And we're like, no, it's not. It's Adam. And he's like, no, it's Frank. And we're like, why do you go by Adam? He's like, because I'm not Frank Miller.
Oh.
And it was just simply that. Like, he changed his name because he didn't want to be confused with the artist Frank Miller. So he went by his middle name, Adam.
Wow.
And it's just one of those, like, it happens all the time. Like, you don't even think about it. And like, is it Michael Keaton? I think his last name's not Keaton. It's Douglas.
Oh.
But he's like, I can't be Michael Douglas.
Right?
Michael Douglas is Michael Douglas.
Right? There already is one. He's famous.
So it's weird, like, when you kind of pick a certain profession, you have to kind of think about that. Like,
that's right.
Am I going to be mistaken for someone else?
Yeah. Then you can also see some of my artwork on Facebook. Alex, the Cape Cod Ant, has a few pages. Each one was the making of. Mm-hmm. Joshua Talks to God also has a page. And I Am the Rainbow also has a page. And I overpost on Facebook. And I am Terry Deonker Kole, because Deonker was my maiden name, and I wanted my friends in Michigan to be able to find me. That's a big mouthful. So those are the places. Like on Instagram, I have a joint account with my husband.
Yeah.
He puts down his comments are snarky and Terry's are sweet. So, and it's
so that allows
totally
you to
true.
make snarky comments
Yeah.
and blame him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Look what he said. Do you believe
What a
that?
jerk, yeah.
Right? But I don't have an Instagram account that's just my art. I think that's the next stage, because in the real world of children's book illustrations,
Well, Instagram is where everything's
when
at
you
right now.
go into real publishers, they ask you as an artist, how many platforms are you on and how many followers do you have? Well, maybe I have 900 friends on Facebook and I have 200 followers on Instagram, compared to my son who has 100,000. Yeah. I mean, it's like, how do you keep track of people's comments?
It's all about how much reach you have now.
Right, right. And that's almost not fair, because a lot of artists
Very true.
are shy. Even on social media, they are still shy and not savvy. It's kind of, I guess, always been that way. And as I teach kids who then go on to art school.
I always felt there needs to be in art school a marketing class.
Yes.
On how to market yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Because I look at these kids and I go, you have so much talent, but you have no gumption.
Yeah.
And so I don't know
course
that
they don't,
you're going to
because
make
they've been
it.
developing their talent. They've been developing their gumption. It's something totally different.
I call it chutzpah.
Yeah.
And it's as crucial as your talent. And even in this day of social media,
but you can't develop both at the same time. You know,
I don't know.
At the same level.
Look at me. I know.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like you can't be, at a certain level of an artist if you're spending your time posting and it's.
But that's the thing about being a freelance artist is that you're working on a job. You need to be living in that job, but you also really do need to be thinking about, okay, when this job is over, what is my next project that I'm working on? So I am too like that. I've been a freelance artist for a good many years now. I can't, I can tell somebody yes for that future job, but I don't want to meet with them and talk about it yet because that'll kind of blow my mind.
Right. You don't want to kind of
might take my imagination and divide it.
Yeah.
So, and even now, I tend to be a person who juggles too many things. So
what's that like?
So I juggle. I have a book to do. Oh, I'm teaching in Plymouth. Oh, I'm the director of a Young at Art show. Oh, I have an exhibit going on at the Plymouth Public Library. There was a 2-week period of time, maybe in October, maybe September, as October was coming, where I thought, okay, I have now officially taken on too many balls.
I haven't gotten there yet. I'll let you know what that's like when I get there.
I felt like I was dropping a few of them.
Yeah.
But so what I do now it's like I'm doing these 2 books, but I'm doing 1 book right now, and I'm teaching 1 day. And that's been that way my head can be in just these 2 places and not in 4 or 5 different places.
Yeah.
So hopefully this book that I'm working on will show the benefit of concentrated focus.
Well, I'm looking forward to it when it comes out.
Yes.
And thanks for taking the time to come talk to us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. So when your book comes out, let me know. We'll definitely share it on our Facebook page.
Okay, great.
And that's pretty much all there is to this.
All
Thanks
right.
so much. This is great.
All right. And everybody out there, if you're an artist, keep on drawing.
Every day.
Don't stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day. Make it a part of your life.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, thanks for checking out the podcast. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network. There's the Bar Talk. There's Old Colony Cast. There's, of course, the Inebri-art Podcast. And our latest, Retro Redoctopus, a kind of nerd genre podcast that you can check out now, all available on our website at inebri-art.com. And pretty much available everywhere that podcasts are available, on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all those things. And if you don't see it where you're looking, let us know. We'll try to get onto that as well. And you can also email us at inebri-art@yahoo.com with your questions, complaints, and suggestions. And also, if you could take the time to rate and review us on iTunes, that would be phenomenal. That helps us get more exposure and bring more of these great podcasts to your ears. And thanks again for listening.